Hi, so this week's discussion is going to be one of the other questions I very commonly get, which is how long does it take to go through the divorce process? Now, a divorce is a multi-step process of filings with the court, and so it's going to be more lengthy than some other processes, like getting a marriage license, for example. But there's going to be a few factors that are really going to control how long your divorce actually takes. So number one is going to be what state are you getting a divorce in? So almost every state has what's called a waiting period. A waiting period is basically the court saying, we want you to wait and see if this is actually what you want. It can be framed in different ways in different states. So for example, some states you have to live separately for a period of time before you can get a divorce. But generally speaking, a waiting period is we want you to think about, do you actually want to go through a divorce? What that looks like is you file, and then depending on the state that you're in, something starts a timeline. That timeline then dictates how long you have to wait before your divorce can be finalized. Now, it's kind of like if you are in a state where there's a waiting period before getting a marriage license and getting married. So some states, for example, have like a 48-hour waiting period. You have to get your license, then you cannot get married for 48 hours. It's to prevent shotgun weddings. Well, same concept of the divorce. The court is trying to prevent you from doing something that you're going to regret. Now, the reality is when most people file for divorce, they want a divorce. So it's not as though they need time to think about it or to wait, but it is a legal requirement. So as an example, here in Arizona, we have a 60-day waiting period. Your divorce cannot be any shorter than 60 days, regardless of what process you go through. Now, if you were in California, for example, your waiting period is 6 months. It means your process cannot be shorter than that amount of time. Regardless of what process you use or who you choose to file with, that's going to be the minimum. So in Arizona, as an example, your 60 days typically starts when service occurs. So one person files with the court, then the next person is served to make them aware that their spouse wants a divorce. That service initiates the beginning of the 60-day waiting period. You can't finalize your divorce in less than 60 days from that date, but you could file on the 60th day to finalize your process. So it's just something to be cognizant of, is that each state is going to have its own requirements on what you need to meet to be able to go through a divorce, and some of those requirements, like a waiting period, are going to dictate how long your divorce process actually is. Number two is going to be the emotions associated with a divorce. So you have to think, if you are the spouse that wants a divorce, you've had time to consider it, decide this is what you want, and really kind of work through that before you even tell your spouse. When you tell your spouse, it's like they're starting at the starting line of emotions, and you've already worked your way towards the finish line. You're already working through those emotions while your spouse is starting from scratch. It means that you're both going to be at different emotional places as you're going through the divorce process, which is completely normal, but will also dictate your timeline. If you're the person that said that you wanted a divorce, you're ready to move forward, you probably want to work more quickly because you have already started to work through the emotions of going through the divorce process. While your spouse may not have known that you wanted a divorce, and so they're starting from square one. This means that they're going to want to move more slowly. Now, what that means for your process is finding a balance between those two timelines. You don't want to move so slowly that the person who wants to move quickly gets frustrated and conflict builds, but you also don't want to move so quickly that you're basically dragging your spouse behind you to help them move along more quickly. You want to find kind of a balance in the middle of how quickly you're going to move through your process so that conflict doesn't escalate. Because the reality is, the more conflict you have, the more arguments there will be, the more things you won't agree on, and the longer a divorce process will take. So it's finding that sweet spot right in the middle. Now, number three, and the last thing that's going to control your timeline and how long your divorce is going to take, is what process you choose. I have another video about what each process is, so I'm not going to go into detail about that, but I recommend you check it out. I am going to tell you that there's the two main processes, which is litigation, going to court, and mediation, working with a third party neutral to help you through your process outside of court. Statistically, litigation is going to take much longer. For example, in Arizona, litigation is typically going to take about an average of a year, but could take longer, where mediation on average is going to be about 2 to 5 months. It's 2 months at the shortest because remember, we have a 2-month waiting period here in Arizona. So it's really going to depend on what process you use in terms of the length of your process. Main reasons for this are: one, litigation causes more conflict than mediation does. This means that, as we just talked about, higher conflict, higher emotions, more time. In addition, you're also controlled by the court calendar. So over here with litigation, you are waiting for the court calendar, as I use the example of kind of like jury duty. You don't pick jury duty or put it on your calendar when you want it to be. The court picks it. Similarly, your court dates are determined by the court calendar, not your calendar. Now over here with mediation, you're controlling your timeline. You're dictating how quickly or slowly you're moving, which means you're lowering conflict, and you also are the one that's in control of your calendar and your timeline. So again, 3 biggest things that are going to control the timeline of your divorce are: one is going to be, just generally speaking, what process are you using? Number 2, emotions. What level of emotions do you each have? And 3, dictated by state law. So what is your waiting period, or what are your other requirements for you to be able to get a divorce? So if you want more information about other common questions that I receive, please feel free to check out our other videos. We jump on once a week to share answers to common questions about divorce, premarital agreements, children, all of those topics that we handle in our office. If you have any questions, please add them to the comments below, and you're always welcome to reach out to the Couple Solutions Center. In the meantime, we'll see you next week.